One, to start off this evening, your dismissal from NPR took the nation by storm and was the leading story for more than a week and led some members of Congress to call for an end of NPR's public funding. Could you share, if comfortable, the intimate details of what actually happened?
Well, yeah, this is a little bit like proctology or something, the intimate details. Well, it's kind of hard to know where to start, but I guess the beginning's always a good place. And the beginning is that I'm on Bill O'Reilly's show on a Monday night. And as normal, I'm doing it from Washington, from the Washington Bureau of Fox News. And this week before, O'Reilly had been on The View, and while he was on The View, he said Muslims attacked us on 9/11, which prompted Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg to walk off the set in protest. And then O'Reilly said, well, I meant radical or extreme Muslims, and they come back, and there's some kind of rapprochement, and the next Monday on Bill O'Reilly's show, the first show that he's having on his own since this fight broke out, I'm his lead guest, and he says to me, tell me where I went wrong. And I said, well, I'm not going to play politically correct games with you. You're technically right. Muslims attacked us on 9/11. The men who flew the planes into the building were Muslims, and yes, they cited their Islamic faith as justification for these terrorist acts. They talked about jihad. And I said only the week before that, the Times Square bomber had been in court, and he had said that what was coming was really a war with America and Muslims, and we'd only seen the first drop of blood. And as part of that, I said, you know, the truth is, Bill, I'm going to be very candid with you. When I'm in an airport and I see people who are dressed in Muslim garb getting on an airplane, I have some anxiety, some nervousness. And then I went on to say, but you know, the fact is you can't base any public policy on this. Clearly, Timothy McVeigh, the Olympic bomber down in Atlanta, the people from the Westboro Baptist Church who go off on those awful rants at military funerals, these people are Christians. We don't make any kind of conclusion about all Christians based on their aberrant behavior, and we can't do that with regard to Muslims. We don't want people burning the Koran or cutting the throat on a cab driver in New York. All of this was said. I left without a thought to it because it was really a full-throated debate. O'Reilly telling me, why does he have to be careful? And I saying, you know, it's not a matter of care. I think that we have to affirm America as a nation of religious tolerance. We certainly want to maintain that and all this. So this is all said at the time, very real, intense cable news debate. I go home, I think nothing of it. The next day I went to Chicago. When I got to Chicago to give a speech, several people said, oh, we loved that segment last night on O'Reilly. I come home, as I'm coming home in O'Hare, a guy comes up to me and says, are you Juan Williams? Yes. And he says, he's a Muslim. He lives in suburban Chicago. He saw the segment and told me this really touching story about how his 12-year-old son had seen him shredding some mail that he got that had Islamic writing, or Arabic writing, I should say, on the front. And the son said to him, are you shredding that because you don't want the neighbors to know that we're Muslim? And the father said, no, it has Allah's name on it, and you don't just throw that into the trash. That's why you take care of it appropriately and separately. But then he said he realized that he needed to speak to his son about what it meant to be a Muslim, and he wanted to be more active politically to improve the image of Muslims in the aftermath of 9/11. And he appreciated what I had said because it allowed people to think about stereotypes with regard to Muslims. All this was said. So I fly home that night, and by now it's Tuesday night, not thinking anything is up. On Wednesday, I was coming here to go to Fox headquarters, and on my way in from the airport, I get a call from a friend who runs a public advocacy group in Washington, and she says, hey, I just wanted to see how you were doing because of all this campaign to get you fired. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, oh, you know, because of what you said on O'Reilly. I said, what did I say? And so she goes over this thing, she reads it all. I said, you know what, everybody has something to say with me because that's my job. I'm supposed to be a political analyst, so if I say, you know what, Israel occupies lands outside its borders, then I'm a bad guy. If I say, you know what, sometimes Muslims make me nervous. I said, Democrats get mad at me, Republicans get mad at me. It's just part of the deal. She says, oh, okay, take care. So I go, and I'm working on shows here. 5 o'clock or so at night, I get a call from the woman who was then in charge of the news department at NPR. And she says, what did you mean? And I said, well, I meant what I said. What do you mean? And she said, and then she goes on to say, well, you couldn't have meant that. This is so offensive, it's obnoxious, it's rude, and it's violating the standards of journalism here at NPR. I said, what are you saying? Did you read the whole thing? Don't worry about it. We don't want you here. You're being terminated. I said, wait a second. Is this a result of some personal animus? What could this be about? And she said, this is the kind of action that's bigoted. And I'm like, what are you saying? This doesn't make any sense to me. Can't I come in and talk to you about it? No, there's nothing you can say, nothing you can do that would change my mind. This has been affirmed from the highest ups. And by the time I hung up, I was kind of stunned. I worked there 10 years, and I had no idea. I mean, what is it that had happened here? And I went on that night I went out and ate some Chinese food. I didn't say anything to anybody. I was in shock. I didn't know what this meant for me personally in my career. And then I was supposed to do Sean Hannity's show that night. So I went on Sean's show, and Sean and I regularly give it to each other pretty aggressively. But I'm coming off, and he says, are you okay? I said, what do you mean? He says, something's wrong. You all right? I said, well, I just had the craziest thing happen, Sean. I just got fired. He said, fired from what? And he takes me into one of the green rooms in the back, and I tell him what's happened, and he said, don't go in, just a second. And he starts calling on the phone, and I hear him saying to Bill Shine. Bill Shine's the executive in charge of news, programming at Fox. He says, no, you got to wake him up, because Sean's show ends at 10 p.m., and we've been in there for about half an hour talking. So it's pretty late, and he finally gets the wife to wake up the executive, Bill Shine. And then I hear them talking, and then Sean says to me, don't say anything to anybody. Just show up here in the morning because Roger Ailes was going to talk to you then. I said, okay, well, I don't know what's going on here. And by the time I walked out of the building, out of the Fox building on 6th Avenue, my phone was beeping off the hook. It was the New York Times. It was the Washington Post. NPR had put out the story that I had been dismissed, that I had been fired, and that I had made these statements. And this is exactly what I had feared, that I didn't control the story, that a much-loved brand, NPR, much respected in the news business, was putting out a story that belittled me, that marginal. And so I tried to sleep that night. I didn't sleep very well. In fact, I don't think I slept at all. And I called my wife, and she was like, what? And I said, I need to figure out what to do about this, but it was too late to call anybody who could be of help, and I'm realizing that the story is spinning out. And the next morning, I remember when I opened the door to the hotel room, I looked down, and there my face was on the front of the New York Times. And I thought, this is awful. And so I kicked it away, thinking, this is ridiculous. And there it was in that box that's up on the corner of USA Today, and I thought, oh, my God. So I kicked that one away, And there it was, on the cover of the next newspaper, and I thought, wow, something big has happened here, something bigger than me. And I went off to Fox and Friends, and they agreed not to talk about it. And I came off, and I was, still very nervous, and then I go up to see Bill Shine and Roger Ailes, Michael Clemente, the people who run Fox. And as I'm walking in with the two executives into Ailes' office, Ailes is seated not in his normal chair, but in a far corner. And he looks up and he says, we can't have you here, can we? And I thought, I hope he's joking. And then he said, sit down. And then they said, we'll take care of you so you don't lose any money, and you're going to have a larger role at the network. So that's the start